Okay. So I know that this has been a lot. I will say this, as time goes on, the volume of information doesn't change, but it becomes more targeted and specific. Because I know you've got to be thinking, like right now, if he shoves another thing into my brain, it's going to explode. I have a raging headache. It gets better. Once you start to use it, it becomes more second nature. So anyway, just going to throw that out. I'm empathizing with you. A file that I want you to open up really quickly before we do the hair thing, just to have this conversation. So again, it's going to be in our session number 3. And it's the second of the gradients. It's that gradient V2. If you actually double click on that, it will actually open up. And it's basically another version of a gradient, but now we've got, just instead of a red line, we've got green and blue as well. We've still got the gradients on the top. So how many of you guys think that the people at Adobe are just geniuses and they came up with the most brilliant thing in the world, and it's just shocking how incredible it is, the stuff that they did, and they're worth the billions that they have? Right? And how many people get angry at having to send them that check for that subscription every month? Although if you're still doing that, you know that you shouldn't be doing your private one right now. You should be using Columbia's because you get that one free. And you get to keep it. You even get to keep it like 3 months after you graduate. But anyway. But the guys at Photoshop, Adobe, they came up with one thing. They had one idea. And it was the billion-dollar idea. And the billion-dollar idea that they came up with was a mask. That's all that they ever came up with. And so we've talked about masks a little bit in this class. Everybody sort of thinks they know, but I need to make sure that you guys really understand layer masking, because from this point on, so much of what we do is going to depend on this and your real implicit understanding of what it is you're trying to do with a layer mask. So, at its simplest, in a layer mask, if you have an area that is black, it blocks your visibility to whatever's on that layer. If the mask is white, it allows you to see everything that is on that area of that layer. If it is a middle gray, it gives you a 50% opacity of what is underneath it on that layer. Does that make sense to all of you guys? So, if we take a look at this guy right here, the layer masks, they're not actually layer masks, they're channel masks. If we take a look at them, take a look at the red channel mask right now. If you click on it, you'll actually pre-visualize it right here. What's happening here is that this is a mask. If you imagine this red light shining through this, then you can see what this mask actually allows to happen. You can preview what that'll actually look like. If you come up to the Photoshop preferences, if you're on Windows, again, edit menu down to the bottom to preferences, and come into, let's start at general. I don't remember where this is. Let's go to interface. Yeah, if you come to interface, down at the very bottom, there's an option where you can pick show colors, channels, and colors. If you click on it, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. In this layer mask, where it is light colored, so again, where we've got the red line, it's white, and it's letting all, so imagine a red light is shining through that mask. All of the red is actually being shown, but where it's green and blue, there is no red in green and blue, so the layer mask is black here. But remember we said that any neutral grays are equal parts of RGB. That's why the gradient looks the way it is. There is zero red coming in down here because this is black. But there is full 255R that's sitting right up here letting all the red in. But in the green and the blue, they're also going to be letting all those colors in. They're equal throughout these gradients. Does this make sense, everyone? So that's it. Layer masks either show or hide stuff, that information. So turn off the show color, because the truth to be told, there is no color in a channel. This is an illusion. If you click on the RGB guy, you can actually close up your preferences. If you click on the RGB guy and you actually drag it down to the to make a copy of it, you'll see the copy is the little square at the bottom that's got the plus on it. You can't make a copy of that guy, but if you click on the red one, you can. You can actually just make a red copy. You can also throw that copy away. But going back to what we were talking about before, this explains why that area, the solid bar that's red, is red. If you click on the green, you can see this is explaining why the green is green. It's letting all the green light in. It's blocking all the green light for the red line. It's blocking all the green light for the blue line. And then again, the gradients are the gradients. If you hover your cursor, I'm going to go back up to the top and turn the color version of it on. If you put your cursor right over the red and look at your RGB readout, this tells you exactly how the mask is operating. The red is 255, meaning that the area of that is white. The green is actually black, 0, and the blue is also black, 0. It explains exactly what is going on in those channels. Does that make sense to everyone? If we add, let's add a blank layer onto the top, so I'm going to go over to the layer part. I'm going to add a blank layer to the top of this. I'm going to then click my foreground color, and I'm going to pick a solid red. So I'm just going to type in a 255R, 0 green, 0 blue, and I'm going to say OK to that. And I'm going to hit the brush, the B key, make it a big brush, and I'm going to paint a big old line down that. And you can see that the resulting image is this red, but look what happened to the layer masks. It explains everything. We have now modified the red layer mask so that it's got that whole area is white, but also on the green and the blue layer mask, that same area is black. If you turn off the layer, look what happens to those channels in time. There you go. In time, if you turn it back on, that's actually in time. Hello? Something is really laggy on this Photoshop. But does that make sense what's going on here? Okay, you can throw that layer away. I want to just make a duplicate of this layer really quickly. Command J will make a duplicate of it, and I want you to blur the shit out of this. So come up, blur, down to Gaussian blur, and let's really smack it hard. Let's hit it, ooh, not that hard. Let's hit it with like a 25, something like that, whatever, and say OK. The only thing that changed were the layer masks. Everything you do in Photoshop modifies 3 masks, the red one, the green one, the blue one. That is all that ever happens in Photoshop. I don't care what you do. Filtering, blurring, changing color, layers, adjustment layers, desaturation, all it is doing is modifying those 3 masks. Every single thing you do in Photoshop is those 3 masks. That's the $1 billion idea. That's what you keep paying for over and over and over every month. Make sense? All right, you can throw this guy away. You do not need to save it. And we need to open up the hair Fantasia.psd. It's also in your session number 3. It's a picture of a, that's wrong. Why do I have all these copies? Let me just open the one you guys have. All right, everybody got this image? Okay. So there's a million ways that you can go after trying to select this. I want to separate this girl. I want to put her on a different color background. There's a million ways that you can actually go about doing this. We can try select subject. There, you should know this right now. If you pick the selection tool, so I'm going to come down in the automated selection versions where the object selection is, the quick selection tool, all of that kind of stuff. Just clicking on that part of it, you will actually see that there is a select subject drop-down menu right now. What's new in Photoshop is this. If you click on this drop-down menu, you can see that there are 2 ways to do a select subject. There is device, which means it's done on your computer locally, and it uses all the resources of your computer, and it does a pretty good job. However, if you do the cloud version, it takes longer, but what happens in the cloud version is it actually uploads a copy of this picture to Adobe. They actually run their big-ass computers on this to build your selection and send it back down to you. I haven't tried the Adobe version on this one yet, but I have tried the device version on it, and the thing that I'm going to show you is infinitely better. So you can use this at your own, you know, however you choose to want to do it, you can use it. But anyway, I'm just going to throw that warning part out there for you. Well, here, let's try it really quickly. Just click on device. We'll do a comparison. And click on select subject. And hope your computer hasn't crashed. All right, so it's selected my subject. I'm actually going to then just save this selection. So again, up to selection, save selection, and we'll call it computer selection, or select subject computer. And say OK to that. Command D to deselect, and you'll see at the very bottom that you've actually got a selection. And it doesn't look too bad to me, so we'll see if we can actually beat this guy out. For all I know, everything in my life has changed. Yes? Yes, I can. So do you have the image back open? Yeah. OK.
It just completely...
It crashed. It's not happy with you, right?
No.
So click the selection tool. Come over here to select subject. You don't have the other version, so this is an older version of Photoshop. So sort of just see what happens. Great. And then come up to the select menu and down to save selection. Yeah, at the bottom. And then just call it computer selection subject or whatever. All right, so this is what it looks like that this guy did. I can spot a problem right here where the ear is, right there off the bat. But nonetheless, we'll see how this goes. But at any rate, we're going to go old school now. So going back, if you click on the RGB version at the very top, how would you guys select this thing if you didn't have select subject? Yep, you wouldn't use the magic wand. You wouldn't use the, if you were good with the pen tool, you wouldn't use the pen tool, whatever. So what is it we're really trying to do here? What do we need to separate this figure from the background? We need a mask, right? It's just that simple. We need a mask. Do we have any masks in this image? We got 3 of them. Why on earth wouldn't I start with those? That's what's controlling the whole image. No? So let's take a look at them. I'm going to click on the red channel. Isn't that a mask? It's black and white, right? Where it's black is going to hide stuff. Where it's white, it's going to let the stuff go through. Where it's super white here, it's going to let... It's a mask. Just that simple. What's going to be the challenge in this selection here? The skin or the hair? The hair, obviously, right? That's going to be a nightmare. The skin I could almost paint in. You can't, but I could almost do that. It's going to be the hair. That's going to be the challenge. So what I am looking for in my mask is the greatest amount of contrast between the hair and the background. The closer they are to one another, the more difficult it is going to be. Because my goal in the end is going to have the figure white and the background black. That's what my mask is going to be. Wouldn't that make sense? If the figure is white, isn't it going to show the figure? And the background is black, isn't it going to hide the background? Isn't that my goal? Yes. It doesn't matter if we work in that direction or the opposite direction. I'm going to do this one. I'm actually going to make the figure black. But then once I get it all completed, I'm just going to invert it. So, I mean, it's simple. It's not like, it's just, you can invert easily. Does that make sense, the goal here? All right, so what I'm looking for is contrast between the hair and the background. So this is what my red channel looks like. I'm going to click on the green, and you can actually see that the green almost got lighter in the hair. It actually brought the skin in a little bit darker, but it got lighter in the hair. And then I'm going to go to my blue channel, and I'm going to click on that. And my blue channel is actually much darker skin, but also that lighter version of hair. So the darkest of the hair, if you go back, the darkest hair is in the red channel. Wouldn't you guys agree? So we're going to just make a copy of the red channel. So I'm going to drag the red channel on top of the little icon at the bottom that is the square with a plus in it. And it's just going to make a channel called red copy. And I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to call it knockout 1. And say OK to that. So now I need to make this a better mask, because right now this isn't a great mask. I can't use this guy. It's not going to do what I need it to do. I need the hair to be black and I need the background to be white. But if you zoom in, I'm going to zoom in to just her left, the right side of the image over here. I'm going to zoom in and take a look at this area right here. One of the things that you need to realize about hair, like in some of this stuff up in here, all like this stuff up in here, hair is transparent. Hair actually will allow background to come back, the color of your background to actually come through it. And I know you guys you've seen that. It's sort of like, it's the way hair lights work. When you've got a hair light on somebody, there's light actually coming through that hair. It's not just coming around it. It's not a silhouette. So part of this mask, part of the hair, I can't get all of the hair black because that would be too aggressive. Does that make sense? Now, the area in here that's solid, this area down in here that's solid part, or this area, like this area that's right up in here, that's solid hair. That's hair on top of hair and on top of hair. There is no transparency in that. That part of my mask needs to be jet black. But this area that's right in here, like this area and this area that's up in here, this part in here, whatever, if I get that to be black, the whole mask will be too aggressive. It'll look like it's been cut out. Yes? So I don't know why this is separate. I don't even know what this is. So you can close that up because we've just got the image. You don't need to save it. Command D to deselect. Good. And simply grab your red channel and drag it down on that little icon that's the square.
Okay.
And then rename that knockout. So you also need to do this in such a way that you don't make your mask too aggressive. We want to just barely get to the point that we need to get to. And we do it mathematically. So I'm going to take a look around here really quickly to find a spot that I know I want to actually work with. And this seems to be a good area right up in here. So if you're looking to sort of be in the same area that I'm in, see if I can find something that's a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to go to this area. It's on the far side, on the right side. So if you can sort of find this same rough area right in here for me. What I know about this is if I hover over this, see this area that's, see if I can find a better cursor. This area that's right into here, I know that this area is almost black. I'm hovering over my cursor, I'm reading 25s. It's close to it, but not quite there. However, I can look at this area right in here, and I know that this area also should be black, but look at my readouts. I'm in the 37s here. If I get this 25 right here to go black, this area that's in the 37s will not be black. It'll still be, it'll be very dark gray, but it will not be black. If, on the other hand, I go after this part that's 37 and I take it to black, the one that was at 25 will already have gotten to black, and it will already be there. Does that make sense? So where we pick our points matters. So transparency you have to keep in mind. What really should be black and what really is already going to be black to help get us there. We need to go far enough. Make sense? Yes?
I can't see the red, green, and blue when I hover over it. It just says K.
Oh, then don't worry about that because we're going to get to K in just 1 second. We're going to deal with what K is. Okay. Are you talking about your drop-down menu up here? Just click on the, if you want to see, just click on the little eyedropper and come down and pick RGB color. Okay, so we're going to do this mathematically. To do that, you need to come down to the eyedropper tool. we're going to do this for the rest of the semester, so either buckle down right now or watch the video. If you click on that, you will get a flyout menu, and instead of the eyedropper tool, what we really want is the color sampler tool. What that allows us to do is drop down points and get color readouts in our info palette, and then when we do changes, we can watch those changes, and we can, again, that's what's going to guide us in terms of building this mask. So I'm going to come to the color sampler tool, and the first one I'm going to drop is right in this area that was right between where I was just talking about. I'm going to drop a point right there, and you'll see it puts down a little target-like thing. It's got a number 1 next to it, and then there is a number 1 that's sitting right up here in our info palette. It's also reading K and then 86%. If you targeted this area, you should be close. It may not be 86%, but it should be something close. K stands for, yes?
And if you aren't getting the K?
What are you getting?
Oh, just the RGB. I'm just not getting the K as well.
Do you have a number 1 there?
I do.
And it's reading RGB?
Yep.
Wow, well, then you're good anyway, because we've got to change ours to RGB. Okay, so K stands for the black ink of CMYK. And in this case, it's an 86% black. 100% would be pure black. 0 would be pure white. 50 would be middle gray. So it's a dark gray. That's all it is. But we work in RGB. So even though that's the true readout of this, we can change this to give us RGB values of it instead. To do that, click on the eyedropper. You'll get a drop-down menu, and you want to change this from its actual color to RGB. And now we get RGB readouts. Then we need to put another spot down that's going to be our background. And typically I want to do the background that's somewhat close to where I put the hair. But what I don't want to have happen in the background is I don't want to be so close to to this background that I might get some hair in there, because that would give me a false reading. So I'm simply going to come out to this area that's out in the white area that's out in here, and I'm going to drop down a second point. I also get a K reading for that, and I also need to change that eyedropper to give me an RGB readout. So now I've got my target. What I need to do is get my point number 1 to black, which is 0, and I need, or 0, 0, 0, and I need to get my second point to white, which is 255, 255, 255. Is that correct? How would you do that? How do you shift tone? Curves or levels? See, this is the part that happens to me that you guys know this shit. But it's just like, oh, I don't know how to change tone. Fuck, you've been doing it for years. I'm going to use levels for this. It's the easiest to get it in the beginning, so that's what we're going to do. Now, we cannot use an adjustment layer. We are not working on layers. We are working on channels. There is no adjustment channel. There is only straight up levels, curves, whatever you're going to do to it. So to get there, Command L. If you can't remember Command L, it's up to the image menu. Here, let me cancel out of here. Up to image, adjustments, levels. Again, Command L. Again, we are changing the level of this. So to get my first point that's 37, 37. Oh, and you should know, again, most of you should know this, but if you don't, all of a sudden now I've got 2 values in my readouts here. The value that's on the left-hand side is the original value. The value that's on the right-hand side will reflect any change that we make. The left-hand side will never change. The right-hand side will change once we start doing things to this levels adjustment. So it's just a before and after showing you. Yes?
How can I get the number 2 eyedropper? Mine is empty.
Yeah, you've only got 1 in here. You need a second one, so select the eyedropper tool and just click out here on the background.
Okay.
No, in the background. Yeah.
Oh,
And then change that K to RGB and hit Command L. So you would think that because this just says 37 that you could plug 37 in here. It does not work that way. I know. Why would it work that way? So here's the trick. You grab the black point slider that's right underneath the histogram, the one that's on the far left-hand side. You click and you start to drag towards the center, and the whole time you are watching that after number. You do not care what's going on here. You're watching that after number and you get close to 0 and then you stop. I'm at 333 right now. Then you go to your arrow keys, your up and down arrow keys, and you start to click them one at a time until you do the absolute minimum that you need to get to 0. Took me like 6 clicks. Then we're going to do the white the same way. You click on the white, you start to pull back, you get close to 255. I'm at 252, 52, 52. Your up and down arrow keys. If you go in the wrong direction, just hit the other direction. Revisit the first one to make sure that the change you did on the second didn't impact the change that you had on the first. This is now my layer mask. Before you say OK to this, we actually need to use the preview check mark on this to turn it on and off. And you're looking to see, did I make this too aggressive? And what I mean by that is are my edges really jaggy? Did I keep some of the transparency in the image? And I've got all that going for me. Now, you will also notice that there are areas of this hair that have highlights in it. Part of it has got holes through the hair, but part of this is just highlight. It's shine on the hair. We're going to fix that after the fact. But I'm going to zoom back out. And again, I'm going to turn this on and off, my preview on and off, and I'm feeling really good about this layer mask, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. At this point, if you do have a tablet, be a good time to turn it on to use it. If you don't have a tablet, it does not matter. You can do all of this work with a mouse. That part doesn't matter at all. Say what? Of course, now my tablet's not working. Why do I get the feeling that we gave them my pen and I've got their pen?
I thought you took your pen, but I think you also switched the Wacom tablet in the setting.
I can't find my device at all. All right, well, so I'm just doing it with you guys. Okay. So this is the beginning of this. I'm going to double click on the hand to actually check it out. I'm feeling pretty good about this part. I'm a little bit nervous about the hair, but that's okay. So I now know that there are areas in here that I actually need to continue to make black. However, I'm worried about what is background, what is hair, all of that kind of stuff, and I'm also worried about her skin. So I'm going to show you one of the great tricks of all time, and it's how you actually use the image to establish where your brush goes and where it doesn't go. So to do that, hit the B key to get a brush. Hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white. I'm going to work on the body first, so hit the X key to make, if black was your foreground, I need black to be your foreground color. That's all I'm trying to get to right here. I'm going to check the edge of my brush, and I'm actually going to make this a medium hard brush. I'm worried about overspray always on this stuff, but hopefully, again, I'm going to use the image itself to actually give me the edge that I need to find. Now, normally, again, I'm still working on this knockout channel. If you tried to come in here and paint along this edge right here, you wouldn't be doing a very good job of it. If I hit Command D to deselect and actually sharpen my brush up, so I'm going to make it 100% hard, and then again try to do the same thing again, it just isn't going to work. It doesn't know where that edge really is. Nobody is that good of a painter. Command Z to undo that. However, if you change the blending mode of your brush from normal down to overlay, your brush becomes a contrast brush. And to show you what that means is I'm going to hit the X key to make white my foreground color, and I want you to come right over the center of the black part of her hair, and I want you to paint white. And it doesn't paint white. Again, it's a contrast brush now. Anything that is lighter than 50% gray, you can lighten. Anything that's darker than 50% gray, you can darken. So this will help find my edge. I'm going to hit the X key to make black my foreground color. Do not make Photoshop work harder than it has to, but you need to just trace along the edge that is her skin. And you'll notice that it actually does a really good job of staying in that line. And I'm going to continue down. It hasn't made it completely black, but you can hit it a second time. So I'm now going to hit this again to pull it down. Again, it's protecting that edge. I'm actually going to hit it a third time, and then I'm not going to worry about that part anymore. The flip side, the hair that's on the background that's on the other side also needs to be lightened. If you hover over it, you can see it's in the 245s. That is not white. I'm going to hit the X key to make white my foreground color, and this time I'm going to soften my brush up because I need to get close to the hair without spraying into the hair. So at this, watch my screen and watch how I do this. If you come up and you simply click on this and pull back, that has actually created much more. This is the edge that you do not want. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start close to it. I'm going to click and drag away, click and drag away, click and drag away, and I'm not going to touch the rest of that. I'm going to do the same thing as I'm coming out here. It does not need to be perfect. However, you can hit this edge along her shoulder pretty well because that's already protected with the black part. Hit the X key to go back to my black and start to paint in the skin on her neck. Now we will learn better ways of doing this in a couple of weeks, but nonetheless you can sort of see where I'm getting here. At this stage of the game, I can go back to a normal brush. I can also go back to a completely hard brush because we don't want any overspray here. Overspray would mean if I was actually, well, here, I'll show you. Overspray, look at my screen really quickly. I'm going to make a completely soft brush. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on this to do some work. And you can see it's sprayed right up onto the background because my brush has got that really soft edge to it. So this next work, I want to keep it completely hard. And I can just paint in the areas right here that I know need to be black. I can actually click and cheat that just a little bit there. But the rest of the body, until I get to the other shoulder, all of this can just go black. You can also hit the L key to get the lasso tool, and you can select a large part of this, stay away from the edges, but I can select a whole big chunk of this and fill it with black. To fill with your foreground color, you hold down the Option key and hit Delete. To fill with your background color, you hold down the Command key. And again, whenever I say Control in Windows, it's Command, it's Control in Windows. Command D to deselect that. I do.
Did you click to fill it?
So if black is your foreground color, you hold down the Option key and hit Delete. So I have a problem on her cheek here. This is one area that I'm really going to struggle with. So again, we are going to learn a much better way to do this later, but I'm going to show you a quick cheat right now. Again, I'm back to my brush. It is a completely hard brush. And then you need to actually look at the edge of your brush. I can sort of see where the edge needs to be. To give you a better view of the edge, you can click on the eyeball of the RGB version. This will now show you a thing that looks like a red overlay. And what the red overlay is showing you, I'm still working on this knockout channel. You can see it's still highlighted. But the red overlay shows where black actually is. But now I can spot that edge along her cheek a little bit better. You take a brush and you do not click and drag. You take a brush and you click once. Then you move it down slightly and you click again. And then you move it down slightly and click again, and then slightly and click again, and click again, and click again, and click again, and click again. Then you do the same thing going up because you worry about that hair. That's how you can actually establish a line like this using a brush. I'm going to turn the eyeball of my RGB off so that I can continue to work on just what I'm really seeing here. I'm going to go back to an overlay brush to paint in this skin, and I'm just going to start clicking and dragging down. One of the problems that I'm having here is that my brush turns into a cursor once I get off the edge. It's really hard to paint this edge of her shoulder. So to avoid that, we do what we need to go to work on what they call the pasteboard. To do that, you hit the F key once. When you hit the F key, what you'll see now is that your brush can come all the way off. So I've got my brush all the way down here. I'm not even on the image, but I can paint with it down here. To get back to the little 3 stoplights at the top of your image so that you can close it, you hit the F key again. It takes you to the black pasteboard, and then the F key one more time gets you back to the little 3 stoplights, and your cursor can't go off the edge without becoming a cursor again. But I'm going to hit the F key to finish this up and work on the pasteboard. And again, I'm just going to use the brush to paint across that and to paint across that. Hit the X key to go to light and take all of that part out. Stay away from the hair. Make this a much softer brush to get close to that hair so that it blends it in, right? Because right now I can see that hard edge line right there. This will soften that edge up without butchering all of that hair. And then finally, the last thing I need to do is take care of some of these highlights that are that are in her hair. I'm going to keep this as an overlay brush. I'm going to make it a really hard brush because I don't want to overspray out into anything else. And I'm just make sure black is my foreground color, and I'm going to clean up some of those little highlight areas that are in her hair, and this area that's up into here. Make my brush a little bit smaller to get that set of highlights that are right on that side over there. And then finally, this side of her face. Go back to a normal brush and finish this up. And this as well. So I could do a little bit work on the straps, but for the time being right now, I'm going to call this a day so that we can finish this up and see how we did. I'm going to double click on the hand. This would be a really good time to save your work. To do that, come up and do File, Save As, and I'm going to name it my homework and put it onto my TOS folder. I'm going to leave it as hair. Make sure that it is an Adobe Photoshop file or a TIFF file. Make sure that you're embedding your color profile. Go ahead and hit save. And then take one quick peek at a very important thing. If you come up to the top, you will now have a history state that has been time-stamped with the thing that you just saved. This will pull your ass out of so many fuck-ups you cannot believe it. You're working all day on a file. You spent 8-10 hours on it, but you've saved it every hour. All of a sudden you realize that one of your layers has moved and that you've done a whole bunch of work, and you don't know how far you can go back before that move actually happened. So you say to yourself, well, I'm going to go back in my 50 history states, but the mistake didn't happen there. Let's say the mistake happened 4 hours ago. Well, your only hope without these history stamps is to actually start from scratch. You're starting all over. But with these history stamps, they stay with this file as long as it stays open. So you start working your way back in your history stamps to at least not have to start the image completely over again. Make sense? Okay, so I'm sorry, what? Okay, so again, for this to be the mask that I want it to be, it needs to be inverted. I need the background to be black, the image to be white, the figure to be white, so simply hit Command-I, it inverts the image, and this is now my layer mask. So let's see how we did. I'm going to come over here and make 2 copies of my background. So I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to hit Command-J to hit the second one. I'm going to name the second one, the one that's on top, Verser, the mask that I made. I'm going to hit the one under it, and I'm going to make this the one that Adobe made. And then I'm going to click on my background layer, and I'm going to add just a new color, a new solid color, because again, I said I wanted to change the background. So I'm going to click on add an adjustment layer. So again, it's the little icon at the bottom that's got the circle that's half white, half black. I'm going to click on it and come up to the top and add a solid color. And I'm going to make it a cyanish color. So I just sort of clicked in the middle to make it a cyan. If you want a true cyan, it's 0 red, 255 green, and 255 blue. That is a true cyan. And then I'm going to add layer masks onto this. So I'm going to come to the Verser one first, and I'm going to come down to my channels, and I'm going to hover over the thumbnail of Knockout 1, hold down the Command key and click. That loads it as a selection. come back to my layer that says Verser, and then click on the square at the bottom that's got the little hole in it. That's the Add Layer Mask. That's actually now putting my mask on this version. Then I'm going to come back over to my channels and Command click on the select subject version that Adobe made, and I'm going to come over here and add a layer mask to my Adobe layer, and then I'm going to turn off the Adobe layer, and this is the version of my knockout right here. So I'm going to do a history state of this and call it Verser and say OK. Then I'm going to turn off my version and turn on the Adobe version and do another history state and call it Adobe and say OK. And then I can go back and forth between the two. So I'm going to scroll up to the top. In my history states, I've got a Verser version and an Adobe version, and a Verser version and an Adobe version, and a Verser version and an Adobe version, and a Verser version. Look at the hair that gets lost in the Adobe version. This is my version right here. That's the Adobe version. This is mine. That's the Adobe. And I still can do better than those fuckers. Yes?
Mine is like gray. Like, I don't know what.
You've still got your select. Just go all the way to the very top and select just the top. No, in your channels. So just click on the very, no, not on the eyeball, just on the top part. That part's good. And then you need to turn one of your layer masks off. I mean, one of your layers off. Turn off the solid color. You've got something turned on in the bottom. You've got an eyeball on the bottom. Scroll down in your channels. Turn off that eyeball. That's your problem. Now you can turn on which one? Yes. You got lost where? After doing what? Okay, so you've got the cyan color, right? Have you applied your layer masks? No. Okay, let's do it again really quickly. So, guys, we've passed the time right now. I'm going to redo just this part. If you need to go, go, but this will only take a couple of minutes. So I just want to make sure. But did this work for the rest of you guys? Yeah? Wait a minute. Are you that fucking cynical? I just handed you the keys. I just took you from the shitty $9.50 an hour retouching hacking job where you're knocking stupid things out on white backgrounds to actually having a possible career and making a real living. You went from $9 an hour to $100 an hour right now. Inside, you should be jumping up and down with joy. I know. All right, so I'll show you how that worked. Just throwing that out there. All right, so I'm going to get rid of my layer masks. You made one what?
When I got lost, I stopped right here.
Yeah.
Do I just throw both of these away?
Just throw the masks away.
Throw this one away?
That mask, that one can stay there, doesn't matter, but just throw that mask away. Okay, so I've got two layers. One was, because I want to see what I want to compare the Adobe one to mine. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, so to do that, I've got one that's called Adobe. I've also got a channel over here. It was the one that I made when it's called the select subject that Adobe made. So I'm hovering over the thumbnail. Do not select the channel. Hover over the thumbnail, hold down the Command key, and click. You'll see a bunch of marching ants. Did that work for everyone? Yeah. If it didn't work, I need to stop and go back. Command D to deselect. I'm just hovering over the thumbnail of this. You see I got the little hand. If I hold down the Command key, in your case it would be the Control key on Windows, do you get the additional little marching ant part to the hand? Yeah. Then just click on the thumbnail, not on the channel, the thumbnail. Because if you click on the channel, it selects the channel and shows you the channel. We don't want that. We just want to load the selection. Come over to your layers palette now. Make sure that the Adobe layer is selected. Are we good? Come down to the bottom of the layers palette, and there is a square down there, a white square that's got a black circle in the middle. That is the Add Layer Mask icon. Just click on it. Any selection that you have will become a layer mask. Are we good? Okay. We now need to do the same thing for your own layer. I named mine Verser. I'm going to make it active. I'm going to turn its eyeball on. I'm going to go back over to my channels palette, and I'm going to look for the channel that I named Knockout 1. I'm going to hover over that thumbnail. I'm not going to select the channel. Just hover over the thumbnail, hold down the Command key, and click. It loads that as a selection. Come back over to the Layers palette. Make sure that your layer that you copied and named for you is selected. And again, click on the icon at the bottom that is the square, white square with the dark circle in the middle to add your layer mask to that. So now this top one is the work that I did. The one underneath it is the work that Adobe did. So I'm going to turn off the eyeball for the Adobe one. So this is just mine. This is the only thing we have visible is mine. And I can create a history snapshot of that. I'm going to just click on the little camera at the bottom of the history palette. I'm going to call this Verser 2 because I've already got a Verser 1. And say OK. So now that is a history state of what this image looks like with my knockout. I can turn the eyeball off for the one that I made and turn the eyeball on for the one that Adobe made and do another history snapshot. And I'm going to call it Adobe 2. And say OK. Now I can go up to the top of my history palette, and I've got Verser 2 and Adobe 2. If you click on Verser 2, it shows you what your image looked like when we made that with just my version of the knockout showing. If I go down to the Adobe 2, it shows what the Adobe one looked like. And in my judgment, when I'm looking at this, I'm keeping more hair detail, more fine detail than Adobe's. If you take a look at this area in here, you can see a perfect example. This is what Adobe did on that, and this is what I did. Mine's got a whole lot more of that fine feathery hair in there. It's a better, more nuanced, subtle knockout. Did that work?
Yeah, but can you go over how to get the cyan again? 'Cause it's not showing up.
Oh, how to get the cyan down at the bottom? Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. If that's all you needed, I put you through all of that. Simply click on the background layer. So click on the background layer to make it active. Then we're going to add an adjustment layer. So it's the icons that are at the very bottom of the layers palette, the circle that's half black and half white. Click on that. You'll get a flyout menu, and you want to come up to the very top and pick Solid Color. And then when Solid Color opens up, it's just the color picker again. Type in the red value, type 0, hit the tab key to go to your green value. Type in 255, hit the tab key and go to the blue, and also 255. So it's 100% green plus 100% blue makes cyan.
It's just giving me the whole screen of cyan.
It's giving you what?
The whole screen is cyan.
Then your adjustment layer is on the very top. It needs to be underneath.
You see that top one, how it's black on the...
All right, so just, oh yeah, the mask is black, so that one you'll need to invert. So click on the mask. To see it, go ahead and turn the eyeball on. And to see that mask, hold down the Option key and click on that mask. Good, and that shows you what it is, so that would be something you would need to finish, but that's fine. But this needs to be inverted. You want to show the face and have the background, so just hit Command-I or Control-I. Yep, so this is really how. I just don't like working in the negative,
Okay.
you know, but it doesn't matter. So then come now down to your background layer. We're going to click on Adjustment Layer. No adjustment layer. Come up to solid color. And in solid color, 0, 255, 255, okay. That gives you no adjustment layer. Click down here again on background. Try adding it again. It's not giving you adjustment layer. Save this image.
Same way.
Yeah. And restart Photoshop. And they're there. You can throw one of them away. You don't need them both.
Okay.
And then turn off the top layer eyeball. So that is just your background copy one. That's the one that Adobe made, I guess. And then, so you can make a history snapshot of that. Click on the camera, call it Adobe. Say OK. Then turn it off and the other one on, and do another history snapshot. And name it after you. Say OK. And then you can simply come up to your snapshots and go between the two. So click on Adobe. That's what Adobe's was. And click on yours and go back and forth. You can just see. So it's a way to compare really quickly.
Okay.
Because otherwise you've got to try to turn a layer off and then another one on really fast.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do. So this is a trick we use all the time.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I still need to download that Wacom tablet for an older version.
Yeah.
Um,
Did it work?
no. So I don't know what other versions you have.
Yeah, let me see. Why don't you bring your computer over here so we can take a look. Yes.
So after I save it and I put it on my drive, that way when I go home I can just look at the saved
Perfect.
files.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.